Most people think becoming a surgeon is a straight line. You go to school, you put on a white coat, and suddenly you're saving lives while making seven figures. But the reality is more like a brutal, multi-level survival game where the stakes are literal human lives and the tutorial lasts over a decade. Right now, there is a surgeon in a hospital who hasn't slept in 36 hours, and there's another one deciding which Ferrari to drive to his private clinic. The gap between them isn't just years, it's an entire evolution of the human psyche. We're going to break down every single level of this hierarchy, from the broke intern who's basically a glorified secretary, to the hospital god who hasn't touched a piece of paperwork in 20 years. And stick around, because when we reach the final level, you'll see the one thing that even the most powerful surgeons in the world are still afraid of. Level 0 isn't even a surgeon yet, but they think they are. This is the third or fourth year medical student on their surgical rotation. They've spent 3 years reading textbooks, and they arrive at the hospital with a pristine short white coat and a stethoscope they don't know how to use properly yet. At this level, your primary job is to stay out of the way while looking like you're helping. You're the master of the shadow. You follow the residents like a lost puppy. In the operating room, you're granted the highest honor possible, holding a metal retractor for 3 hours without moving a single muscle. Your hands will cramp, your back will scream, and you will be ignored by everyone in the room until the attending surgeon looks up and asks you a question about an obscure branch of an artery that you definitely forgot to study. If you get it right, you get a nod. If you get it wrong, you're invisible for the rest of the day. You're paying 6 figures in tuition for the privilege of being the most hated person in the elevator. Then graduation happens. You get the long coat, you get the MD, and you enter level 1, the intern. This is the most dangerous and miserable year of a surgeon's life. You're officially a doctor, but in the surgical hierarchy, you're the infantry. You are the first line of defense against the chaos of the hospital, which mostly means you're the one who gets paged at 3 a.m. because a patient in room 402 can't sleep. You aren't really a surgeon yet. You're a data entry clerk who happens to wear scrubs. You spend 16 hours a day on a computer managing discharge summaries, ordering labs, and checking boxes. You're so broke from student loans that the free graham crackers in the nurses' lounge constitute a gourmet meal. You live in a constant state of low-level terror that you'll accidentally order the wrong dose of potassium and kill someone. In the OR, you're still just suturing the skin at the very end of the case, but to you, those 3 stitches feel like performing a heart transplant. You're exhausted, you smell like hospital coffee, and you've forgotten what sunlight looks like. If you survive intern year, you graduate to level 2, the junior resident. This is where the ego starts to form and things get interesting. You finally know how the hospital works, you aren't scared of the nurses anymore, and you've started to develop your surgical hands. This is the see one, do one, teach one phase. You're finally allowed to do the opening and the closing. You're dissecting through tissue, feeling the resistance of the human body, and learning the difference between what's in the textbook and what's actually under the skin. But this level is also a trap. It's the peak of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know enough to be confident, but not enough to be safe. You'll try to move too fast, and a senior resident will have to bark at you to slow down before you nick a vein. You're still working 80 hours a week, but now you're actually doing the thing you dreamed of. You're starting to look like a surgeon. Your suturing is getting faster. You can tie a knot with one hand while talking about what you want for lunch. But then you hit level 3, the senior resident. This is the grind. You are the workhorse of the surgical department. At this stage, you're expected to know every patient on the service, every complication, and every lab value. You are the bridge between the gods at the top and the minions at the bottom. You're starting to perform major portions of the operations. The attending surgeon might even leave the room while you're working, which is the ultimate sign of trust. But that trust comes with a crushing weight. When something goes wrong at 2 a.m., the intern calls you. You are the one who has to make the call. Do we go back to the OR, or can this wait until morning? You're developing a surgical gut. You're starting to see patterns. You can look at a patient's face and just know they're about to crash. You're still broke, your relationships are probably suffering, and you've developed a dark sense of humor just to cope with the sheer volume of trauma you see every day. Now we reach level 4, the chief resident. This is the pinnacle of residency. In your specific hospital, you're a king. You run the entire surgical team. You decide who goes into which OR. You protect your juniors from the wrath of the attendings, and you are finally performing entire surgeries from start to finish. You have the technical skills of a surgeon, but you still have the soul of a student. You're preparing for your board exams, which is a level of stress that turns your hair gray overnight. This is the year where you decide what kind of surgeon you're going to be. Are you going to be the kind who screams when a tool is missing, or the one who stays calm when the room starts filling with blood? You've spent 5 to 7 years getting here, and you're finally at the end of the tunnel. But here's the catch. Once you finish, you realize you've just reached the bottom of a brand new ladder. Level 5 is the fellow. Not every surgeon does a fellowship, but the high flyers do. If you want to do pediatric heart surgery or complex neuro-oncology, you spend another 2 years as a fellow. At this level, you're a fully qualified surgeon, but you've chosen to become a beginner again in a hyper-specialized field. You're the person people call when the regular surgeons are out of their depth. You're learning the secrets of the craft, the tiny 1% adjustments that make the difference between a good outcome and a perfect one. You're finally starting to get paid a little more, but you're still working for someone else. You're a specialist, a sniper. You don't care about the whole body anymore. You care about one specific square inch of it. Then comes the big leap. Level 6, the junior attending. This is the first time in your life that there is no one standing behind you. When you're in the OR and something starts bleeding uncontrollably, you can't look up and ask for help. You are the help. This transition is a psychological shock. The first year as an attending is often more stressful than intern year because the legal and moral responsibility is entirely yours. You're building your numbers. You're trying to build a reputation. You're finally making that surgeon money, the $300,000 to $500,000 salary you've been dreaming of since you were 20. You buy the big house, you get the nice car, but you're still working 60 hours a week because you're the new guy and you have to take all the bad weekend shifts. As the years pass, you move to level 7, the established partner or senior attending. This is the sweet spot. You've been in practice for 15 to 20 years. You've seen it all. You can do your most common surgeries with your eyes closed. You've built a massive referral network so you only operate on the cases you actually like. You have clinical judgment, which is a polite way of saying you've made enough mistakes to know how to avoid them now. You're the one teaching the residents. You walk through the hospital with a specific kind of swagger. You've reached a level of financial security where you're no longer working for the money, you're working for the craft. This is where many surgeons stay, and it's a good life, but some want more. Level 8 is the department chair, or the surgical titan. This person isn't just a surgeon, they're a politician, a researcher, and a brand. They run the entire department. They decide who gets hired and who gets fired. They fly across the world to give keynote speeches at conferences. They have a surgical technique or an instrument named after them. When they walk into a room, the air changes. Even the senior attendings straighten their ties. They don't do the easy cases anymore. They only step into the OR for the impossible ones, the cases that other hospitals turned away. At this level, the ego is absolute. They are the hospital god. Their time is billed in thousands of dollars per hour. They have reached the absolute peak of the medical hierarchy. But what's the final level? 9. The retired legend. This is the stage where the surgeon finally puts down the scalpel. For a person who has spent 40 years being the guy, the one who saves lives, the one who everyone listens to, this is the hardest transition of all. They go from being a god in the OR to a person who has to wait in line at the grocery store like everyone else. The final level of being a surgeon isn't about the money or the prestige, it's about the legacy you leave behind in the hands of the students you trained. The journey from a broke intern to a surgical titan is a process of losing your humanity to gain a superpower and then trying to find that humanity again at the end. It takes a minimum of 13 years,